Hello there guys and welcome back. So today we're going to do something special. Originally I was only going to respond to that Star Wars Girls video on Andor Season 2, specifically the first arc, but after watching Star Wars Theories video with a friend, I decided to respond to both instead. A double feature if you will. After taking that Robot Heads video, I'm more than confident that this show is not only fantastic, but also one of the best pieces of Star Wars media ever made. And I'm so glad that Tony Gilroy hasn't dropped the ball with Season 2 so far, which is what I was concerned about. But this show has received so much undeserved criticism, especially from that scene, I felt like it was worth making yet another video defending this masterpiece. So without further ado, let's debunk the worst criticisms I have ever seen.
That are the implied and then later on like attempt at grape scenes that are, yes, actually in a Star Wars show. And remember guys, Star Wars is a kid's show that's about space wizards with laser swords, and if you criticize in any way, shape, or form, well, you're just an overgrown man baby living in your mother's basement.
What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
Idiot sandwich what?
An idiot sandwich, Chef Ramsay.
I already explained this in my Robot Head response video, that this show is meant for older audiences, so I won't be repeating that point again. If you want full elaboration, I recommend you check out this video. Plus, the whole space wizards intended for children mindset is being applied by you and the other critics of this series, but in reverse. Instead of the show being meant for kids, so you can't criticize it, you're implying the mindset that since Star Wars is meant for kids, there shouldn't be any mature themes or subject matters within it. Or at the very least that those subjects shouldn't be explored in a more adult manner. I would honestly say that Star Wars is meant for everyone, in a sense while not everyone will like it, everyone can like it, i.e. everyone has a chance to enjoy it. So why can't we have a piece of Star Wars media that is more adult oriented? I want to argue that Star Wars is prime real estate for having more adult oriented content. Let's take the MCU for example. Back before the current Disney Plus era Marvel shows, we had them on Netflix. Those shows, such as Daredevil, Punisher, Jessica Jones, etc., were allowed to be maturely rated and were much darker and grittier than the main movies. And while those shows were very self-contained from the MCU, they were considered canon for years, until they weren't, until they were again, but that's besides the point. Anyway, they have much more mature themes, such as Daredevil struggles with his faith and moral code, brutal deaths, violence, drug usage, smuggling, corruption, along with other mature subjects. And no one I've ever seen has complained that those shows were too dark for the MCU, with kids being the main target demographic. Because it wasn't just kids, everyone was meant to get some of the MCU. I don't see why that can't be applied to Andor. I will argue that not even Andor is the darkest piece of Star Wars media. That would be KOTOR 2. A game that I know that you're a fan of. That game is incredibly deep, so much so that I can't go into great detail about that, but that would take too much time that I don't have currently for this response. The point is that the whole criticism that this show is too mature for Star Wars is just moronic and comes from a place of closed-mindedness that I talked about in the last video. So I'll need you to bring your A game as to why the show isn't good.
People on my timeline going crazy because they're like, oh, but this is so modern. It's like, guys, Star Wars isn't supposed to be modern. It takes place in a galaxy far, far away. It's not present day California or Texas, right? It's not the United States of America that is dealing with, immigration problems. No, it's Star Wars in a galaxy far, far away. Putting in this current day news headline clickbait stuff in Star Wars, it's not going to age well.
Alright, why? Why isn't it going to age well? You don't really substantiate this, so I don't have much to work off of. Plus, Star Wars has always taken inspiration from current political climates. You do know that George Lucas took much inspiration from the Vietnam War, right? And that war ended just 2 years before the first movie came out. That was pretty modern for its time, and no one would argue that those movies aged poorly for that reason. In fact, the vast majority of people claim that they haven't aged at all besides some of the effects. The prequels even took some inspiration from the War on Terror post 9/11 and the Cold War, which ended just a few years before those movies started in 1999. So why is it a bad thing inherently? I need more to work off of that you're just refusing to give me.
Is it even entertaining? Which is my key point. If you guys are going to be making Star Wars and telling stories, they at the very least have to be entertaining. This just isn't. And
that's That's subjective, and I'm not explaining why again. Now if this video is just basically the same regurgitation I've seen from Robot video, or other brainlets on Twitter and YouTube.
And I'm going to explain why. Now, as you guys can see up here on the screen, I have 4 pictures because they basically represent the 4 different plot lines that we see throughout all 3 of these episodes. Now, I'm going to start with Andor because even though the show is named after him and it's supposed to be a show about him, he actually has the least amount of screen time and storyline in all 3 of these episodes. If you guys are thinking, that's weird, so the show's basically about 3 women? Yes. Yes, it is.
Oh yay, we're playing this game again, aren't we? That's completely disingenuous. Dedra and Cyril share the same arc since they're a couple now in this season, which we're getting into in a bit, so they share the same plotline where they develop their relationship in a fashion that's way better than Attack of the Clones, by the way. Plus, Mon's plotline also has her husband Perrin involved. Luthen is also there, undercover and advising Mon what to do about her friend Tay, and what else is happening with the rebellion. On Mina Rao, it's not just Bix, there's Bee, Woman, and Brasso. The latter is essential considering that he dies at the end of this arc, and is especially the leader of the group while Cassian is away. So pretending that it's only women is a complete fabrication in order to make this show seem like it's woke when it's not.
Bait and switch. There you go. You guys were thinking it, but I said it. So you guys want to know how exciting Andor is in his own show, like this, oh my gosh, epic plot, which is, you know, the reason why he's basically non-existent in all 3 episodes. Well, the show starts off with him stealing a tie-in scepter, except he doesn't know how to fly a tie-in scepter. He doesn't even know how to work the gadgets in a tie-in scepter, and it's just a perfect illustration of how the Empire are absolute idiot morons that don't know how to, you know, stop someone from stealing their own property.
For one, the Empire are not the idiots in this case because Cassian had helped to infiltrate them for a traitor who's a contact for the rebellion. And not everyone's going to know who he is, considering that in the present arc of the last season, they arrested him for different reasons, and they didn't even know that he was Cassian Andor. Which makes sense because the galaxy is pretty stinking big, and he's not so high enough in the Empire's most wanted to where he should be known across the galaxy. Plus, the reason he didn't know how to fly the Avenger is because he has different controls than the other time variants. They literally addressed this in the 3rd episode that he was given faulty intel about the situation, which is why he initially didn't know what to do, but he does manage to get a grasp on it pretty quickly for his life and death situation.
And so he steals the tie-in scepter, he breaks down in outer space, he crash lands on this planet, and there's people there that were abandoned, but not abandoned because their team, I guess, took the ship to go back to save other people, and so there's this weird kind of power dynamic. Well, Andor is held prisoner by these people, even though he tries over and over again to tell them that they are on the same team. Great communication skills, by the way. And it ends up with them coming down to like a shoot-off where some people have his ship and he's tied up on their broken ship, and then there's animals and they're like, okay, we're gonna have a face-off instead of just killing each other. And guys, get this, the way that they decide who's going to be in charge and, you know, the ceasefire, they play a game of rock, paper, scissors, and the best out of 5 wins. I kid you not. So if anyone tries to use that argument, this is well written, this is genius writing, I want you to bring up that scene because it's retarded. So
I honestly don't see an issue with there being a Star Wars equivalent of the game, considering that Star Wars has always had its own equivalent of our earthly customs and games, like the Jarik, which is their version of chess, or Pazak, which is basically just space blackjack. So I don't see the problem here. The only issue I have with this thing is that why the Rebels didn't wait until morning to have their game, considering that the animals were around. Well, I think that Cassian would still capitalize on the opportunity to escape, and considering how competent he is, I don't doubt that he will be successful. Plus, the reason why they do it is because the arc makes very clear that they're disorganized and clueless without their leader, to a point that they have their own civil war. So I don't think it's an issue either that they use this as their method. Let's be honest, people use way dumber methods to solve conflicts in real life anyway, but let's not go there.
as he's flying away, we see that they are on none other than Yavin 4 from A New Hope. Yay, member berries! Yay, yay, yay! And then what does Andor do the rest of the time?
Look here! Look, listen!
This is actual fan service that makes sense. Considering that this show is about the inner workings of the rebellion and their origin, which leads into Rogue One and A New Hope, and since in the trailers we see the rebels have established their base there, it makes sense to set up beforehand, like how we see the Death Star construction in the post-credits scene of the finale of the last season, to set up for the movies. They both make sense, and they set up the movie that Cassian originates from, which I consider to be a good thing.
List of plot lines from these three women that I have on the screen now. This chick, I can never remember her name, so I'm just going to refer to her as Blondie. And then, of course, we have Mon Mothma and Bix. Now, let's just go to Blondie since she's easy. Nothing really happens with her either. So she is now, I guess, dating and living with that dude from season 1 that was, Imperial, and then he was living with his mother for whatever reasons. Somehow they got together. I must have missed that. And she is at some secret meeting that Krennic, the big bad guy from Rogue One, is holding, and how they want to take over this planet that is making basically their version of silk with these spiders, and they want to take over this planet because the entire planet just mass produced, their linens and stuff, and so they just want to take over that planet. And Krennic goes up to her because he's like, you had a plan before I was even done with my sentence, and then she's like, well, you got to do this, da da da. So she's like some evil genius. And then it cuts to her and her boyfriend getting ready because his mother's going to come over for dinner. I'm not kidding. That's really what happens. And then the mother's being overbearing, as most mothers are. And once the boy leaves the room, she basically has a one-on-one with the mother being like, this is how it's going to be, lays down the law, and she obviously wears the pants in the relationship. And that is her plot in 3 episodes.
Right? Wrong.
For one, it's not out of nowhere. It was set up in the last season, especially with Cyril saving her from the writers here in the finale. Seems like you didn't even bother rewatching the last season to prepare for your analysis of the show. It's always nice to note that you can't put in the effort to actually remember the season that this one's building off of, so you just make baseless claims. As for her being more mentally stronger out of the pair, what's wrong with that? It is clearly established that Cyril has self-esteem and confidence issues, and Dedra is the older one out of the two, and much more experienced than Cyril is in their fields. Cyril is shown in the last season to be overly dependent on his mother, as well as trying to impress her. In a way, his relationship with his mother is kind of a foil to Cassian and Marvelous. Plus, considering how awkward the situation was with Dedra and his mother during the dinner scene, it kind of makes sense as to why Cyril has this reaction. One thing I like to address that's outside this video is a thing I saw on Twitter that it makes no sense that Dedra claims that she's from an Imperial orphanage or whatever they call it, and the Empire hasn't been around for that long. But I would just say that's either a minor typo in the script, or it could be interpreted as Dedra being loyal to the Empire, that she refers to them as such even back when they were still just a republic, which I don't have any trouble believing considering her character, but at most, it's just a minor issue. Before moving on to the next video, I have just one more thing to cover with Anna. On Twitter, she mocks the kiss scene between Vale and Cinta in the second arc of Season 2. When I called her out on this, she claimed she wasn't implying that she thought it was bad, that I had to expose my bias, that I need to solve my anger issues. For one, you use the word whelp. In this context, whelp is the expression of disappointment and acknowledge it as something undesirable. So very clearly, you're claiming that it was inherently bad because it was in it, rather than it being bad based on execution. So next time you might want to do some basic research on what words mean, as opposed to backtracking your brain-dead criticisms and claiming it's your critics that are unreasonable ones, and then you point out bias and double standards, which this show has faced in spades. And my only complaint is that The Rise of Skywalker had the kiss first as opposed to this show, where it's meaningfully used for 2 developed characters. Now that they're done with Enna here, it's time to move on to Star Wars theory. This is the time where we talk about that scene, so get ready.
There was a scene in Andor, if you aren't up to date, where there was a lot of, and I gotta use censored words because YouTube can destroy you, end you if you say certain words. So, SA, sexual, grape, you guys know what that means. Essentially, there was a scene at the end of the 3rd episode where one of the females was SA'd, was graped, essentially. She got away, finally, great. But look, I didn't feel like that really belonged in Star Wars. It was just off-putting. I feel like what George did was that he had implied scenes. So like Anakin with the kids, with the lightsabers, and then it cuts. You know what's going to happen. And there was actually supposed to be a scene where you show all of the kids chopped up on the floor, but they decided against it. And I've covered that as well in videos. Also, even Nick Gillard told me that there was a scene where, the hologram scene, that was an actual scene that they ended up taking and turning it into a hologram because it was too dark. That was a full-on scene, right? Where Anakin was choking out one person, like killing another, and then beheading, and then fighting Syndra. Like, that was all filmed. They filmed it in Nick's garage. So, or was it Hayden's? Anyways, there's implied scenes, and there's you're going too far with Star Wars. Leia with Jabba. You don't see him taking her from the back or, his passing her around or anything like that. Maybe it's in the books it's explained, or the comics is totally different.
Why? Why is it too far? The actual act doesn't happen since Bix kills the guy before he can actually do anything. There's no nudity or anything remotely close to that happening. In fact, this scene is honestly way tamer compared to others on TV or film, so your whole point on it going too far is kind of moot. If you're going to say it's because she says rape, then not only is that a realistic thing to say, it also makes sense for her to say that, since the driver was going to arrest her for killing the officer, and she's just trying to explain the situation. She would be an idiot if she didn't. If you're going to say that her saying the word is out of place in Star Wars, then they should use some sort of Star Wars terminology for it, or just have her say attack. That's just kind of disrespectful to downplay by being too scared to actually use it, and I think it is bold that this show addresses it for what it is. That's what makes the show mature. It's willing to go into these subjects without trying to be edgy about it, while at the same time, it's not so scared it tries to downplay in some sort of naive manner.
Whether it's someone we know very close to us, or people we've known, or ourselves, unfortunately, we know it's fucking real. I don't want to see it in my Star Wars. Look, Sopranos is my favorite show in the entire world of all the shows out there. There's a very real scene with that in there. It fits the show. It fits that world. It fits that real world on Earth. This never been done in Star Wars, doesn't need to be there. There's a lot of people that have a problem with it. I have a problem with it. I don't need to see that.
Pardon my French, but you're an asshole.
Once again, that's limiting creative freedom for the showrunners and writers as long as it's handled well, which it is. It's fine to put it there as long as it makes sense, which is also the case, but we're going to be talking about that in a little bit.
I don't think it makes it some nuanced show. It's very, like, what? We don't need to see that. You can imply it if you so wish. You want to go there. Cut away, like George did. And I feel like we need to follow his beat to how he would film and edit.
How is George Lucas relevant to any of this? Yes, he created a franchise. That doesn't mean everything needs to follow this exact direction on how to make Star Wars. In fact, before the Disney requisition, he was going to make a show called Star Wars Underworld, which was going to be much darker than what we've seen in the movies, being described as dark, sexy, and action-packed. It was going to explore the more criminal elements of Star Wars, and judging from the quote, if it's accurate, it would also explore the more mature elements. So, in a way, Andor does kind of follow that direction, but in its own way. Just because George Lucas didn't make something, that doesn't mean it's not Star Wars or that it's bad.
I said Vader wouldn't tolerate that shit, nor does the Empire condone it. Listen, I'm getting a lecture from people who just found Star Wars last week because of Disney, telling me what Vader would and wouldn't do. Of all the people that are major fans of Star Wars, at least of the first 6 films, knowing the ins and outs, the behind the scenes, and the character analyzation from the books and the movies and the comics, I am definitely one of the most knowledgeable when it comes to the first 6 movies. There are lore masters on comics and books and EU and all that, and that's not my forte. My forte is the first 6 films. I know them well, and I know the characters very well. Vader is an evil guy, but he's not sick in the fucking head. He's not that level of evil. There's boundaries to evil. He would never do something like that to a woman. He may kill her, which he's done, but he's not going to do that. And I am damn sure if Vader saw an Imperial doing that, he would never allow it to continue. He would choke the guy out, kill him, and probably kill her too, because why not? But he wouldn't stand for that. You're telling me an Imperial officer would come to Vader or to the Emperor and say that this happened, and then they'd be like, oh yeah, whatever, it's the Empire. No, that's not what the Empire stands for. And people are giving me lectures being like, in a land of genocide and tons of murder, you're telling me that this doesn't happen? No one's saying it doesn't fucking happen. I'm saying that Vader wouldn't stand. That's not what the Empire stands for. The Empire aren't a bunch of grapists.
Are you retarded?
Oh man, this is it. The moment we've all been waiting for. A point so bad, even his friends on Drinker's Bar dunked on him for this. Why would Vader actually care in the slightest? Yes, there's that small bit of Anakin still inside him, but that part of him doesn't manifest again until Return of the Jedi while his own son is dying. It was only then that Anakin emerged inside. Before that, Vader had fully taken over. And Vader does not have any attachment to anyone outside of Palpatine, to a certain extent, and even then, he always had plans on overthrowing him. There's his children, but even then, it took one of them almost dying for him to snap back. He either wouldn't be aware of these activities happening, or if he did, he wouldn't care. He kills people on the regular. His first official act as a Sith being the slaughter of children in the institution that he's known for most of his life up to that point. All of a sudden, some random woman being molested is supposed to invoke his ire? That's insanely idiotic. Plus, you keep harping on him showing the act, despite the fact that it didn't even fully happen. Yet, your favorite Star Wars movie is Revenge of the Sith, where there is one on-screen death of a child in that movie. So, explicit child murder is fine, but non-attempted molestation? The hypocrisy levels are off the charts, and I don't think I even need to substantiate why Palpatine, of all people, wouldn't care about what's happening as well. While it would obviously still be illegal, something being illegal doesn't mean that it never happens. There will always be those who abuse their power or take advantage of the situation if they can. So any argument that this doesn't make any sense is an uphill battle to say the absolute least.
I'm so tired of being careful with my words because YouTube will just take it. What the fuck? Why are people even having an issue with this? I swear to God, if it was another YouTuber, that side of the fandom would be praising them. You go, King! Or fuck, actually, you go, Queen! You know. It's wild to me that this is even a thing. And in 9 years, I've never encountered something this idiotically insane. And why? Just because I think people don't like me. Well, at least the minority. And if it was the majority, well then fuck, I wouldn't have the subs that I have. Thanks to you guys. Call it ego, call it whatever you want, but facts are facts. Cry about it. Which I've done, and they made fun of me for that too. It's like, what the fuck do I just shut my... If I shut my mouth, they'll say something too. It's like, I can't... Nobody can have opinions unless it's like... This is insane.
No one is saying that you're not allowed to have an opinion. If you don't personally like this show, that's totally fine. The problem is that you, along Robot-Head and Anna, have made terrible arguments as to why the show isn't good, based on either personal preference or just inaccurate argumentation. Now, I'm tired of this demonization of Andor fans, as if we're all just toxic, fake Star Wars fans for arguing why this show is genuinely good. Sure, there might be some of those people out there, but much like the quote-unquote toxic New Vegas fandom, those people are few and far between, and the mere existence of those individuals doesn't negate the arguments made. The arguments I've seen against this show have been absurd, to say the least. That's why I'm here to correct those points. Maybe people can finally realize that the show is good and respect Star Wars. Plus, some of the behavior critics of the show can also be considered toxic, but let's not even go there. The point is that these videos are terrible and fail to do the show justice. Now I think that'll be it for today. I'm glad to have made these videos, and I think I'm going to go and watch the rest of Season 2 because so far it's been fantastic, and cements it on my mind is not only is the best Star Wars show, but one of the all-time best pieces of Star Wars media ever made. That'll be all for now. This is Skids, signing off.